Barr's time isn't known, so this is showing the day chart for noon. His moon is somewhere between 10.5 Leo and 23.5 Leo. Barr is our current Attorney General, and I must say, as corrupt as most members of the Trump team. The Pluto conjunction to his moon, operative regardless of the time, though most intense the closer he is born to midday, describes what is an obvious leaning toward the exercise of power and influence in favor of the white privileged autocracy, with a very strong dash of religious conviction. Soft-spoken and avuncular, in a style reminiscent of Dick Cheney, he is frequently disingenuous, never above bending and twisting the rules to serve himself and his gangster boss. Despite his mendacity, he is mentally disciplined, though his discipline clearly does not span across all dimensions, since he looks like a portly Fred Flintstone. If I judge Pluto to be his corrupt use of power, then Neptune is the mendacity, the deception, and the smooth talk to make it seem like he's not a threat. I think he's actually a lot more dangerous than Trump, because he's the top law official in our country, and he actually has a brain between his ears, which our president does not. Early in his tenure, he didn't just put his thumb on the scale, he put both hands or maybe his whole body on it in order to whitewash the Mueller report conclusions toward a view favorable to Trump. It was infuriating to see an attorney general so obviously playing dirty politics in order to manipulate the truth. Disgusting, despicable, a total scoundrel move. Plutocrats are like this, all ahead flank, and who cares about truth or principle as long as their power status quo is maintained. He came into his post with Saturn transiting into his Venus-Neptune opposition, and on the first pass, in the spring of 19, correlated with the negative press he received as a result of the Mueller report shenanigans. Then, Saturn stationed at 20 degrees Capricorn in late April, and retrograded back all the way to 14 degrees in September. This kept his Venus-Neptune under siege, and so the Mueller report scam turned into revelations of his early role in the Ukraine conspiracy, as well as his efforts to cover up anything that might look bad for his crooked boss. One example was an attempt to shut down the whistleblower trying to call Trump out on his corruption. As the impeachment effort moved forward from late summer and into fall, Barr continued to look pretty bad, as his name would be heard here and there in the congressional testimony and never in any kind of good light. He also seemed to be considering the use of garbage data provided by a once apparently sane mayor, now turned psychopath, Rudy Giuliani, who was purportedly sending all kinds of damning evidence from Ukraine against Biden and his son. Of course, all of it total BS and totally discredited, but this didn't seem to faze Barr one bit. Bottom line, through this period, Saturn was putting pressure on the Venus-Neptune opposition, which, in addition to the arrogance and indulgence producing Jupiter-Sun square and the power-tripping Moon-Pluto-Mercury alignment, is a visible pressure point in his chart, and is what has been most affected since he took his job in early 2019, and is what continues to be affected in current times. Saturn is often very hard on political figures because it finds a way to call them to account. Of course, the other transit in play through this whole period is Neptune opposite his Saturn-Mars conjunction, which reflects Barr's efforts to confuse and deceive the public. In February of 2020, he was embroiled in another controversy as he sought to please his boss by lowering the sentence on convicted scoundrel Roger Stone. Other than that, he seemed to fade mostly into the background during the pandemic spring months of this year, but then he came back into the foreground when, once again, he put his whole body on the scale to try to dismiss all charges against an obviously guilty Michael Flynn. This was followed by his unbelievably reckless involvement in Trump's Bible Walk of Infamy, as he apparently ordered the police and National Guard to unload their weapons on the peaceful protesters near the White House. This is Neptune transiting in direct opposition to his Mars-Saturn conjunction in Virgo. By now, Saturn is too far forward in Capricorn to have much effect on the Venus-Neptune opposition, but Neptune itself will continue to challenge that Saturn-Mars conjunction right till the end of 2020, with particular emphasis in June and July, as well as November and December. Barr will not look good during either of those periods. We are currently in June, and in addition to his walk of shame with Trump and the knowledge that he ordered law enforcement to attack American citizens, he has already heard a harsh rebuke in regard to the Flynn case, as the judge reviewing it stated in so many words that Barr is nothing but a Trump lackey. It is quite possible the judgment itself will also go against his wishes. Keep in mind, Neptune stations on the 24th, so the weeks on both sides of that are potentially very tricky for Barr and for his crooked boss, who also has serious planet action in this area. In short, in Bill Barr, we have ourselves the picture of a self-entitled plutocrat running the Justice Department. A man apparently intelligent, but also unscrupulous and dishonorable, just like the orange man he serves. Unfortunately for him, as the Trump Titanic inevitably sinks to the bottom of the ocean this November, Barr will be swept into the dustbin of history, where he belongs. That is, unless he too finds himself facing the long arm of the law he so much tries to manipulate and corrupt. Depending on the role this Mars plays, if we had a birth time we would know more, Neptune, and it isn't an easy Neptune at birth, will continue to hit on it until at least 2024, and this could mean years of trouble and discord. As I've said about other members of this crew, couldn't happen to a nicer guy.